my name's Benji and welcome to Dice vs Cards. Today we're looking at Sentinels of the Multiverse, a 2 to 5 player cooperative heroes versus villain game that has elements of hand management because you're going to be slinging spells and abilities at the AI opponents, and variable player powers because all of the heroes you can choose from and the villains as well have their own strengths and weaknesses. So you play as a herd of a team of heroes coming together in the fictional comic book world of Sentinel comics to pit your wits and skills against various villains. You're going to be picking one of those and a staging ground to fight to the death. So let's see how this plays and whether this could be the next game for you. So the object of the game is for you to cooperatively as a team defeat the villain that you've chosen by reducing invariably their hit points to 0. Now to set up the game, each player will need to pick their own hero and take that hero's respective deck of cards. You'll then decide on the villain that you're going up against. So here we have Baron Blade, and you'll take their 2 character cards and their respective deck. And on one of the character cards, we show you how you set up that villain. So here Baron Blade starts on this, flip this way up, and also makes you search for a mobile defense platform that starts the game. You'll then need to decide what environment you're fighting in, or if you like, staging area, and this is going to bring up a number of obstacles for both the heroes and the villains throughout the game. You'll take that deck, and then you'll also need easy access to all of the damage tokens, and then each player will then draw the top 4 cards of their respective decks to start the game. You're then good to go. So each round is broken down into 3 turns, the first of which is the villain turn, which you carry out in this order. So you start by following any instructions on card that reference the start of the villain turn, and then, if there are none like there are at the moment, you then play the top card of the villain deck and follow any instructions printed on that card. However, this Blade Battalion isn't going to do anything until the end of the villain turn. So once you've done that, you then proceed to the end of the villain turn, and here the Blade Battalion is going to do a number of damage to the hero with highest HP, equal to, or hit points equal to the hit points of itself. So here we need to find out where the hit points are found on cards. So heroes' hit points can be found in the top left hand corner. So here we see Ra starts with 30 hit points and Tempest 26. And then most villain and environment cards have their hit points in the top right hand corner. So here we see Baron Blade starts with 40 hit points, this mobile defense platform 10, and the Blade Battalion that we're talking about 5. So ultimately that means that the Blade Battalion is going to do 5 damage, because that's its current HP, to the hero with the highest HP, which is Ra here with 30. So you'll then take 5 damage and put that on Ra. We then move to the hero turn, and it's worth saying at this point that all turns in the round, so the villain turn we've talked about, the hero turn we're talking about now, and the environment turn that will end the round that we'll talk about in a moment, all make you check for cards that reference the start or end of that turn. So remember to do that both at the very start and at the very end of each turn. Now the hero turn is where each player is going to use their hero and then pass to the player to their left. So the first thing a player will do is to play a card from their hand. So let's just say it was Ra's turn. They could play this Summon Staff card. It is a one-shot ability, which means you'll follow the instructions on the card, then discard it. And here it says that
blah 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 blah.
So once you've played a card from your hand, you then can use a player power. Now each hero will have its own specific power. So here you'll see Ra can deal 1 target 2 fire damage, and they can do that damage to any environment or more likely villain card that has hit points or HP. So some cards like the Grievous Hailstorm that we've already talked about actually have its own power, and you can use that instead of your hero's power at that point. Now once you've done both of those things, you then draw a card from the top of your deck, and then the player to your left gets their go. However, if you're not happy with anything you can do on your turn, you can choose not to play a card from your hand and not to play a power, and then you'll draw 2 cards instead. We then proceed to the environment turn, and this is where you're going to draw the top card of the environment deck and follow the instructions on the card accordingly. So here you'll see the Fire in the Biosphere card will take effect at the end of the environment turn, and when it does, it's going to have an effect on each target. Now a target, it can be either hero, villain or environment card, but it's any card that has a number of HP or hit points. So here it's going to destroy each target, either an ongoing card from each target, like this Grievous Hailstorm, or the player can choose to take 2 damage. Now most environment cards will also have the ability for the heroes to destroy them. And in this example it says that if one player discards 2 cards from their hand, then they'll destroy this. So as you can imagine, you're looking to deal damage equal to the hit points or HP of villain and sometimes environment cards. And when that happens, you'll then place that card in the relevant discard or trash pile. However, if one of our heroes takes damage equal to their HP, so let's just say Tempest does, you're going to flip that card, denoting that that hero has been incapacitated. And whenever a player takes a turn with that hero on future turns, instead of taking a regular turn, they'll have 3 options available to them in order to support the allies that remain and are fighting the good fight still. Now there are 2 other types of cards you'll play from your hand. They are equipment cards that act similarly to ongoing cards and remain in play and most often have a passive effect. And also some cards have the limited keyword, and what that means is that you can only have 1 of that named card in play at any given time. However, there's a long list of keywords that can be found in a glossary at the back of the rulebook. Now you'll also see some cards that will say you'll take H damage, for example, instead of X. Now H simply means the number of heroes that you're playing the game with. So you're going to rinse and repeat that process until you as heroes invariably reduce the villain's hit points to 0. However, sometimes the win conditions are different, or lose the game if all heroes have been incapacitated. So that's how this game plays. What did I think of it? So who is this game for? Well, it just about sets its feet down in the light to medium weight category, but this ain't no gateway game. If you like the idea of a fictional comic book world for you to immerse yourself in, and you want to team up with friends and family to do some villain bashing, and because of the AI opponent no one gets left out, this really could have something for you. So you might want to consider this if you liked Aeon's End, published by Action Phase Games and Indie Boards and Cards. Or Legendary, a Marvel deck building game published by Upper Deck. Now both of these actually are deck builders where you're upgrading your deck from a starting pool, but they really do have the closest theme and vibe to Sentinels of the Multiverse. So in terms of gameplay, well, this is an experience that you really get the sense is made for gamers by gamers, and never is that more obvious in the new player experience. Now the turn sequence is really quite straightforward, so this is a game that's very, very easy to get to the table. But then the complexity is devolved into the cards themselves, be it the heroes you're choosing from or the villains that you're fighting against. So in the rulebook, you'll see a list of complexity for the heroes. So you'll want to pick low complexity for your first games, and a list of difficulties for the villains you can fight against. But then you know that you can ramp up both the complexity and the difficulty in future playthroughs. That really does help with the variety on offer here, the value and the replayability of the game. Now, it's the environment cards that really do flesh out the core mechanics, because I think without them there'd be far too generic heroes versus villain turn sequences, and adding that really does add some flavour, because it doesn't just hinder you as the heroes, it hinders the villains as well. So you need to decide cooperatively whether you can live with what the environment cards are bringing to the table, or whether you need to bypass them to be able to do what you need to do to the villain. Now this is a game that's quite fast paced, but you need to work together strategically, be it supporting other players on their turn or just going gung-ho for damage, because without working cooperatively this becomes an extremely hard game. Now it's not a game without some gameplay niggles. what tends to happen in most games, no matter what hero combination you pick, no matter what villains you pick, there does tend to be a rinse and repeat element. What you do on your first turn is invariably similar to what you do on your last turn before you win or lose. Now, that might be a reflection on the far too straightforward mechanics. You know, you play a card, you do a power on your turn. That may be a little bit too limiting. Or perhaps they needed to just add some further elements. Maybe that could have been in the form of resource management, you know, working towards building a super team attack, something like that. So in terms of the look and feel and theme of the game, well, you can't say much other than what a beautifully crafted product this is. It's dripping in theme. All of the heroes have their own background and character arcs, and the fictional universe they've made here is just so lovingly crafted. You could not expect more from this in terms of theme. Component quality is well made. Subjectively, I'm not a great fan of the art style. It's more 80s cartoon than comics for me and doesn't do a great deal, but I can't argue with the fact that overall you're getting such a beautiful, beautiful piece of work here. So with all that being said, Dice Services cards are going to give a final score of 8 out of 10. Now this isn't perfect, but it's darn near as close as you're going to find. However, that's it from me. I'll see you next time.